there were moments in my career where I had extreme doubt, right? Like I never truly saw myself as a world leading talent, and when you get to a stage like the Olympic Games, you're up against the best athletes in the world.
Welcome to Ballers Brew, the world's hottest sports podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bromfield, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for another exciting episode. At Ballers Brew, we dive deep into the latest topics and trends in the sporting industry, offering diverse perspectives and thought-provoking discussions. Whether you're a passionate fan, a professional athlete, or simply a sports enthusiast, this is the place to be. Join me as we explore everything from game-changing strategies to behind-the-scenes stories, all aimed at elevating your understanding of the world of sports. This is Ballers Brew.
Today, we have a guest who embodies the very spirit of our show. A remarkable individual whose journey in the world of competitive swimming has been nothing short of awe-inspiring. You might know him as a two-time Australian Olympian and NCAA Coach of the Year, or perhaps as the host of the sensational podcast Inside with Brett Hawke. But beyond the accolades and titles, Brett Hawke is a name that resonates deeply within the heart of the swimming world. His dedication to the sport, his passion for coaching, and his commitment to sharing the untold stories within the swimming community have made him a celebrated figure. He's coached Olympians, achieved NCAA and SEC championships, and brought an insider's view of the swimming world to countless enthusiasts. Brett's impact extends far beyond the pool, and his unique experiences as both a world-class athlete and a coaching legend allow him to offer unparalleled insights into the world of sports. Brett's journey has been one of a person deeply immersed in the world of sports, and today, we're fortunate to have him join us for an insightful conversation. So, without further ado, let's dive in to the world of swimming, coaching, and the essence of what truly makes this sport exceptional, as we welcome Brett Hawke to Ballers Brew.
Michael, thanks for having me on Ballers Brew, my friend. Pleasure to be here. Always great to talk about swimming. Very passionate about it, and I'm glad you've connected with it and me today. And I'm happy to share with your audience.
Awesome. Firstly, from my side, thank you so much for availing yourself and putting some time aside to come on. I truly appreciate and value your time, and I'm really, really looking forward to unpacking this conversation as to where it might go, looking at a few topics within the swimming world, but also trying to understand a little bit of your story and the role that you played as both an athlete and coach, and how you have played an integral role to the swimming world itself. So perhaps for those that are listening and who aren't necessarily aware of who Brett Hawke is, beyond the titles and accolades, can you take us through some defining moments or challenges in your life that have shaped who you are today and the valuable lessons you've learned along the way? Essentially, what makes Brett Hawke Brett Hawke?
It's an interesting question, and it's something that I've spent some time thinking about and evaluating, because I do a lot of clinics now. I do swim clinics around the world. I speak to a lot of kids. So I've gone out of high performance swimming, the world that I was immersed in for 15 years as a professional athlete and a coach, and went back into, the grassroots of coaching, kids under 18, 10, 11, 12, kind of when I started in the sport. And I try to summarize who I am and what I've done. And ultimately what I come to the conclusion is that I'm just like them. I started just as a normal kid, right? And I had my own hopes and dreams, but also I had insecurities and I had fears and failures, and I wasn't very successful early on in swimming. Swimming just gave me a sense of identity. It gave me a sense of hope. It shaped me in the sense that it gave me discipline early on in my life, which I needed. It gave me direction, which I think swimming does for a lot of people. And ultimately, it became a passion of mine, something that I love to do. I love to go to practice. often, if I was to miss a practice in the morning for whatever reason, the alarm didn't go off or I overslept or something happened, I would feel extremely guilty that I wasn't at practice training with my friends, and improving. And so that's where the passion initially started. It was just, connecting with the water, connecting with a group of swimmers and coaches and them shaping my life. And then it became something more of, okay, I want to be successful in this. I want to get better at this. And then it develops, right? Then you go into this phase of your life where you're dedicated and you have discipline and you make sacrifices and you put things aside, and maybe you make choices that are in favor of swimming and not in favor of other things. And so then it becomes more serious. And then, after I finished high school, it was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And then you have to make more life choices. And so I wanted to continue to swim and train and try and make the Australian team. And ultimately, one of the big things that shaped my life ultimately was I missed the Olympic team in 1996. I was 20 years old. I'd been training full time, kind of as a pro athlete or semi-pro athlete for a couple of years. And I went to the Olympic trials and missed the Olympic team by 3/100ths of a second. And so, the difference between going to an Olympic Games, representing your country for the first time at the biggest meet you could possibly go to on the world stage, and then sitting at home and watching it, had a devastating effect on me, but devastating in a positive way. And I think this is where things like this can make or break you. And this event broke me at first, and then it made me. I watched it and I realized, no, I want to be there. I want to be an Olympian. And at that point in time, I had kind of resided myself to the fact that I'm never going to be Olympian. It's not me. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not at that level. I'm not that type of athlete. I'm not, I had all these reasons why I'm not going to be there. I shouldn't be there, or I'm not there. And then I came to the realization of like, look, I can get there if I want to. But it's going to take work. It's going to take a remake of who I am and what I'm doing. So that moment in time was my biggest defining moment. And then I decided to go to America, and long story short, I got a scholarship in America, came back 4 years later and made the Olympic team for 2000, which then ultimately changed my life completely. Once I was an Australian Olympian at a home Olympics on one of the greatest teams ever assembled on Australian soil, well, then my life was completely different after that. So those are the moments I think that shaped me the most, missing a team and then making a team 4 years later, for sure.
As you're speaking, I was also just jumping back to when you came down for your camp in South Africa, and you're talking about your stories in your time also building up to those trials and the trials and tribulations that you went through. And obviously, as an athlete, you often go through these ups and downs, and it's all about how you can navigate your way through those hard times, and that truly shapes you. And I find it very interesting when you're referring to, now coming back to how you stepped away from high performance swimming and now you've stepped back in, and specifically looking at the grassroots level of sports, trying to nurture the love that you have for swimming, that I have for swimming, for the sport that we're so passionate about. And
right.
It's truly awe-inspiring that how in today's society, sport has the power to transcend all. It has the power to unite a nation, and most importantly, it can help provide direction and stability for young individuals who may have other external influences that may be affecting their well-being or physical well-being, mental well-being. So it's truly awesome that you have that ability to give back on both that level and at a continuous high performance level. And maybe to fast forward and to move into that moment that you're referring to, you said there are two moments. The first being when you didn't make an Olympic team, and the second being when you did make an Olympic team. As an athlete who's been on the world's biggest stage, I'd like to hear about a deeply personal moment. Can you take us back to your first Olympic final, and what was going through your mind as you walked from the call room to behind the block, surrounded by the anticipation of the world's eyes on you? What are the emotions you experienced in that pivotal moment?
Well, truly, if you want something deeply personal, I'll take you back even a few moments before that when I was in the warm-up pool. And not something that I talk about very often, and it can make some people uncomfortable, but there were moments in my career where I had extreme doubt, right? Like I never truly saw myself as a world leading talent, and when you get to a stage like the Olympic Games, you're up against the best athletes in the world, right? And a lot of these are genetically gifted athletes, and I just never really saw myself in that realm. And so, but now you're competing for your country, and now you're competing for a spot in the final and maybe on the podium, and you have to believe that you're that person. You have to convince yourself that, hey, I am the best swimmer in the world. I'm the fastest swimmer in the world. Otherwise, you have zero chance. But, ultimately, subconsciously, that, hey, you're up against Alexander Popov. You're up against Gary Hall Jr. You're up against these genetically gifted freak athletes who are phenomenal. And then your body reminds you that, hey, you're not at that level. So in warm up, I actually threw up in the warm up pool. Like I was physically sick in the warm up pool. It was my body's reaction telling me that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not at this level. And after I threw up, I had a deep sense of calm come over my body. Like it was almost like all this tension, all this disbelief was inside of me, and it had to get out. And I threw up in the warm up pool, and all of a sudden I felt extreme relief. And then I actually felt confident. After that. It was like, okay, now I can just go and perform. All right. So there was this relaxation that came over me. And so you talk about walking to the call room. I had a deep sense of relaxation and calm, and but understanding the moment too. You're about to walk out to a platform where millions of people are watching you, so that's not lost on you, but it's not something that you're dwelling on, but you feel it, you sense that. But that relaxation came over me, and I was proud of myself. In that moment, it's like I made it. I'm one of those guys. I'm one of the best in the world right now. And so you walk into the call room and you see the 7 other guys that have made it, because there's 8 lanes, and you're in one of those lanes, and there's 7 other guys that walk in, and you say, I'm amongst the 8 fastest swimmers in the whole world. And this is incredible. It's kind of one of those pinch yourself moments. You're like, I did it, and then you've got to remind yourself, hey, we're competing for medals now. So then you have to get in the mindset of, okay, allow yourself to perform at your best. This is going to be the moment where you give yourself permission to perform at your best. And so you just have that, you have that moment with yourself, and then it's just lock into what you've trained to do. Then it's just allow your body to take over and go through the motions kind of, robotically almost, where you just turn your brain off and you let the body flow with what you've trained to do. And then it's just a freedom to perform. So yeah, there's moments where you're thinking, and then there's moments where you just say, that's it. Thinking is done. It's time to go. And you get out there and you wait for the gun to go off, and you go, you just go, and that's it. You just put it all out there and you give it your best, and that's it. That's all you can do.
It's interesting to hear the transition from the different mental stages you go through, from you walking from the warm-up pool to actually okay, now we're going to the meet room, and like, okay, now we're in the call room, to okay, we're going to the blocks, and it's now time to lock in and go. Is it something normal as for professional athletes or even semi-professional athletes that in a high performance environment you get those moments where your nerves can get the better of you, and it may become debilitating, like the experience you had in the warm-up pool? Or is that something more that through training you might have to force yourself to go into situations to overcome?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, we ultimately choose our sport, we choose our event, and I chose a sport and an event where I get one shot, and I got 21 seconds to prove that I'm the best in the world at what I do, and that's it. I got one chance, 21 seconds, boom, it's over, it's done. If I play rugby and I drop a ball in the first attack, Well, I got the rest of the game to pick up and kind of figure it out and make adjustments and but I'm nervous, but okay, I made a mistake, but I can adjust. Swimming, you don't have that. You're nervous, you make a mistake, you're done. That's it. It's over. So, again, that's not lost on you. It's like you've got to be perfect here, and that's difficult. I think that's where the training comes in to say, hey, if you're not trained at a level that allows you to perform ultimately at that level, then you'll never get there. So I made sure that my training was on point so that when I was in that moment, there was no excuses. I could allow my body to take over. And that's what I did. And so ultimately I'm happy with the result. I ended up finishing sixth fastest swimmer in the world at the time. There's only 5 people ahead of me. And I was happy with the 5 people that beat me, knowing that, it's a couple of hundreds of seconds in it, but they did the training, and they have the talent, and they use the moment to get the best out of themselves. And I was happy to come away with 6th place, knowing that I gave everything I could and didn't allow myself to make any mistakes. I did the best swim that I could do on the day, and I was not disappointed with how I performed,
And it's amazing that you're able to do that. As you say, it was a stacked field. You had amazing guys around you like Alexander Popov and Gary Hall Jr. And it's, these world-class, exceptional sprinters.
Yeah. And one of the things I said to myself too is like, look, I don't know if you can win, but you're not going to finish last today. You're not finishing 8th. That's it. I made a promise. I was like, you're not finishing last. So, I figured it out.
I'd like to take it back to the 2 moments that you spoke to earlier that were pivotal in your swimming career, and that ultimately, I would want to say, please correct me if I'm wrong, cemented your trajectory for the success that you had both in and out of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to perhaps try and look beyond that, are there any key insights or experiences that shaped your perspective on the sport other than that, and how you were able to identify your role within it greater than just being an athlete who's there to perform?
Yeah, I think the question is there moments again that kind of, that I remember that were pivotal and shaped me. And then there's one moment in particular where I made the decision to go to America in 1997. And that was a very uncomfortable situation for me, because I was obviously leaving home, leaving my country for the first time, going to a foreign land, putting myself in an environment where I was coming from the best swimmer, fastest swimmer in my team, in my state. I was the number 1 person. And then I'm going to a team in America where I'm, 6th or 7th on the depth chart. I'm not that good. And I got guys all around me that are better than me, and they're beating me up in practice every day. They're coming for me every day. They're making sure that they let me know how much better they are than me. And so I'm really uncomfortable now. So now I'm like, okay, Brett, if you want to compete here, you better figure this out. So I had to get very competitive. So my competitive nature came out big time, which is I think ultimately enabled me to go to things like the Olympics and say I can compete here, because now I knew I'd practiced that. I put myself in an environment where people were better than me, and I came through it. I came out on top. And so going to America for me was huge. I needed that push. And ultimately, I think not only physically, but I needed it mentally, to say that I can compete with anyone. And so America was huge for me. And then coming back to Australia, then I had the mindset, when I was first in Australia, it was like, I hope I can do this. When I came back, I was like, I know I can do this. Like, there was no question in my mind. Once I came back from America after, right before 2000, I knew I could make the Olympic team. I knew I was the fastest person. I knew nobody could beat me in Australia. So I came back with a different confidence that I didn't have before.
As you're speaking, what I'm taking away is how the environment in which you place yourself plays a truly important role in the manner in which you're able to develop as an athlete and also as a person. And those people that are around you also play a significant role in determining how much success you can garner during your tenure that you were there. And that's also really cool that you're able to find yourself in a team that, at first it may be difficult, but you're able to come out on top and be a better athlete at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, environment is huge. And, you may have a situation like David Popovich right now, who chose to keep himself in a positive environment. He has his family, his friends around him. He has a couple of training partners, but he has this comfort to know that this is the right place for me, and it's working for him, and he's thriving. I need to get out of that situation. I need to be uncomfortable. So everybody needs something a little bit different, but it's important that you identify what you need and what works for you. But I'm not saying this way is the only way, but I think the environment absolutely is a key factor in how you perform.
It's something I've recently noticed within my training as one, just by placing yourself with the right team, the right coaching, the right facility, and the right management can make a huge difference to. I would start off with your mental well-being, because if your mental well-being is in the right place, then I feel that you're able to, truly hone in on your performance and as you mentioned, that competitive nature.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Whoa, whoa. Hey, Ballers Nation. Quick break in the action. Thanks for tuning into Ballers Brew. If you dig our fresh take on sports, please rate, review, or share the podcast. It only takes a moment, but it makes a huge difference. Thanks for the support.
Over the past few months, it is quite notable as it reads on your shirt, the sprint revolution. It is quite noteworthy the influence that you have had within the sprinting realm within swimming, given your background as a sprinter. Could you elaborate, on some of the unique challenges and strategies that sprint swimmers face and how this area of the sport has evolved over the years?
Yeah, listen, it's always been a passion of mine, and part of the word revolution and why I highlighted it in some of my logos is the evolution, right? Like, you take the R away and it's actually an evolution. So that's what we're really looking here, is like, how has sprinting progressed over the past 20 years? Where has it come from? What were the things that I was doing that were important, but also what are the things that we needed to let go of? And how has it evolved? And that's what we're looking at now. And I think that we've made great strides in our understanding, but there's still such a long way to go. There are still so many programs around the world that are still doing the same old testing, the same old way, the same old training. We haven't evolved. And so part of my thing that you've noticed in the past, 6 months to 3 months is really a push on the education, the understanding, the acceptance. I think in a lot of times I was embarrassed to be a sprinter, because coaches would make fun of you to say, well, sprinters don't work hard. Sprinters just spend more time in the shower than they do in the training pool. And, there was like this negative vibe, and, it was almost embarrassing to be a sprinter. Now it's like, it should be a sense of pride. Like, we should be identifying sprinters. We should be categorizing them. We should be allowing them to be put in training groups that help them thrive and grow. And it shouldn't be survival of the fittest. A lot of the reasons why I'm here today is because I survived the madness of the training that we went through. And that shouldn't be the way for future generations. So I'm trying to shape it to say, hey, not only are sprinters valued, but they should be understood. And this is where the education comes in. I'm really pushing hard on the education. I'm putting a lot of stuff out on Instagram specifically that will help educate people on what sprinting is, how do we coach it, how do we identify it, why should we value it. All those sorts of things need to be understood on a much deeper level. And I'm really pushing hard on that,
And it's been really insightful for myself to see the perspective in which you're applying to the swimming world, especially as you mentioned now with sprinting specifically. And whilst you're down for the training camp in South Africa and also with some of the content you've put out there, a lot of the time I sit back going, oh, it's not just me. Oftentimes in training when I was growing up and I was in high school and we'd be doing certain sets, and I'd wonder to myself, why are we doing this? It may be beneficial, and I know the importance of what we're doing, and I understand how that plays a pivotal role within our training block. But why me? Why am I doing this set versus the guy who might be swimming the 400 free? Like, where it's a fairly big difference between mid distance and sprinting. And there are often times where, like, for me, it was like I love swimming fast, and I love having the ability to race. And that's my favorite time in any set, is when we're putting on equipment, we're racing, we're doing resistance, we're having that ability to now to truly engage. Not that you're not engaging with an entire session, but it's just that it's a different mindset, as you've rightfully mentioned.
Yeah, somebody sent me a quote today, and they said, it resonated with me so much. And he said, "It's time we acknowledge fast twitch is a gift, not a disability." And for many years, I felt like that. Like, I felt like I was ashamed. I had this disability because I couldn't train the way that my teammates trained. Grant Hackett, Ian Thorpe, these legends of the sport were regarded as, the greatest swimmers, the toughest swimmers, the best swimmers, because they could handle all this mileage and this yardage, and they were working hard all the time. And it was like, oh, Brett's weak, Brett's insignificant, Brett's not a real swimmer. It's like, so I always looked at myself like I had this disability. And so now this quote it just resonated so well. It's like, it should be celebrated that we have this talent, this fast twitch. It should be understood on how to nurture it and progress it. And a lot of athletes like myself are being pushed out of the sport because we're not tough enough, or we're not able to handle the training. And I think we're losing a lot of talent in swimming.
It's quite sad, and I don't know if it's maybe predominantly in South Africa, but that's just where my perspective comes from. And
no, it's all over the world.
Yeah, I've noticed, and I had some really talented guys that trained with me growing up in high school, and I mean, man, like, they were, for what I thought, I was like, they're insanely quick, and they're the guys I was competing against, and some of them they dropped out over time, and I always wanted to myself, but why? Why, if you have so much talent, and there's so much more room for you to develop, it's like you haven't hit that ceiling yet. It's just this glass roof, and you can still become so much faster. You have so much potential, and it never made sense to me. And last year, I was fortunate enough in Stellenbosch. We had Chad Leclos and Max Litchfield. They came down to Stellenbosch to train with Sonny Trigg. And our squad was fortunate that we got to join them for a few sessions. And Sonny and Max were always going at it. And it was truly inspiring as a younger athlete to see these guys who, they're fairly older than us. Not that they were old, but they're fairly older than us. And we're going, that they're not at their cap. And we still have so much to still go and have that opportunity to grow.
I think that's what we're looking at in swimming too, is like we're pushing out on what is expected to be a full career, right? We're seeing guys like Chad push on. We're seeing so many other athletes push on with their careers and still not get the best out of themselves, So it's exciting to know that we can swim until our late 30s and still be swimming best times and still be at the top of the world. So there's so much to learn in this sport. We need to be training the right way so that we can keep athletes in the sport,
So maybe jump into some trends and developments within sprinting itself. Looking back at the recent world champs, we had some amazing times in the men's 50 free. And even now, looking recently in the European short course champs with Benjamin Proud dropping a 20.16, I think, 20.0. Please correct me if I'm wrong. 20.16, I think it is.
20. Just in short course, he went 20.18. Yeah.
20.18. That is the one. With these insanely fast times coming out, and they really are pushing the barriers close to setting new world record marks. What do you believe are some significant trends and developments that are occurring in the sport today? And how do you believe that they may influence the future of competitive swimming, specifically when looking like someone like Cam McElroy?
Well, the biggest trends, I think, in sprinting first of all, in swimming is specificity, right? Like, if you want to swim a 1500, train for the 1500. If you want to swim a 50, you train for the 50. If you want to have range, then train for range, right? Like it's okay to say I'm 100, 200 swimmer. You got to do some 200 pace work in practice each week. You got to do some 100 pace work. They're two different swims. So you've got to train them differently. But at the same time, you can combine, right? And then you might say, well, I'm good at freestyle and backstroke or, whatever it is. But I think that the trend is the specificity of the training. That's what it's coming down to. People are training specifically for certain events, So that's one thing. The other thing that is happening is race pace training. It's coming in. A lot of people talk about USRPT, which is this ultra race pace training. And I think people are swimming at higher speeds now. I think the difference with that and what people are doing in terms of pacing is that, when I look at different speeds in freestyle swimming, let's say, you got your top end speed, which is your 50 speed, you got your front end speed of your 100, and then you got your back end speed. So there's 3 different types of speed right there. And then, a lot of people are working on easy aerobic technical work. So very, very highly technical aerobic. So there's not a lot of in between anymore. A lot of people are cutting out, for the lower end people, for the sprinters, they're cutting out kind of VO2 max training. They're cutting out threshold training. A lot of that has been completely wiped away. Whereas when I was training 25 years ago, it was primarily based around threshold training, primarily based around heart rate training. That was where a lot of our work was done. And we would only dabble in the speed. So I think it's being flipped on its head now. I think that much more speed emphasis and less on the heart rate training. That's almost disappearing from speed training now. And then you've got guys like Cam McAvoy, who I just spent time with in Australia. I spent a couple of days watching him, and all he's doing is swimming fast in training. He's wearing a suit every single day in practice. He's getting off the blocks every day, and he's refining his skills that make him the fastest swimmer in the world, right? Like that's reaction time, power off the block, entry, kickouts, underwater kickouts, breakouts, first cycle, getting on his first cycle. Then he's working on power and technique at high speeds, maintaining those things. So he's doing speed specific training. And then the other thing that's really prevalent in swimming now, especially in speed training, is resistance training. A lot of people are training heavy resistance, right? So we're talking about pulling buckets or parachutes or some type of heavy resistance every single day in practice. There's a lot of resistance work going on. So I think that's where the evolution of the sport is going as well.
Interesting question, I feel, is when you're referring to resistance training, how heavy is too heavy, or how much resistance is too much resistance?
Well, that's a simple answer, right? Like as soon as your technique breaks down, then it's too heavy. What you want to do is you want to pull resistance with proper technique. So if you're just slashing at the water and you're grabbing and you're throwing your body line and your head is flying all over the place and you're just ripping at the water, then it's too heavy, right? Like, and so you're either going to have to put on fins and paddles to help, get more surface area and get a little bit more traction on the water, or you just have to reduce the load, right? And so that's to me where it becomes a problem, is that, yeah, it's okay to pull weight, but if you're out of your natural technique and it's not assisting you moving forward efficiently, then reduce the weight, right? And so what I do is I start with a very light weight and I slowly increase to the point where they can handle heavier weights. I don't start at the heavy side. I start at the light side. Like you might just add a t-shirt, let's say. Okay, let's swim with a t-shirt on. It's a very light weight, but it's resistance on you. So you can start there and then you can build into, bigger and bigger and bigger until they get to the point where you're like Cam and you're pulling massive amounts of weight, but you're doing it under the right conditions, under the right technique,
If you're referring to now with technical execution, and as you rightfully mentioned, starting at a lighter resistance, so perhaps shirts which might be best suited for junior swimmers coming into a more senior performance environment, how do you then determine, as we've discussed earlier, focusing on specificity in terms of, you may have a junior athlete and he might be 15, 16, and he still has quite a bit to go in terms of maturity and development. How do you determine at what age or at what level of performance that okay, it's time to start bringing in that focus on specificity, depending on their event that they're specializing in?
Well, I mean, how do we determine anything? I think in the past, the natural progression of any junior athlete is to say, okay, we're going to increase the number of workouts and we're going to increase the volume of the workout, right? Like that's the natural progression. So at 12 years old, you might say, I'm doing 3 sessions a week. And then at 13, you might say, I'm doing 4. And then at 14, you might say, I'm doing 5. And then by the time you're 16, you could be doing up to 10, so it's like, we have a natural progression already figured out. What we now need to do is figure out what's the natural progression of speed training in this environment, right? And a lot of people are saying, well, they're not developed enough, mature wise. Well, we're not afraid to give them 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 of practice. I mean, we're beating the hell out of them aerobically. So what's to say that we can't then, complement and supplement that with some speed work, right? Like, so that's what I'm talking about is like, let's stop this carnage of volume. And let's swim at a higher level. Let's swim with better technique. So first of all, we should be doing a lot more technique work in training. And I'm talking about slow drilling and perfecting of technique at slow paces. I'm not talking about speed. So like understanding technique, body position, spending time on body position, spending time on feel for the water, spending time on the correct head position, rotation, catch. I mean, you can break all the strokes down into components and work in these components. So kids need to be taught skill over and over and over again. That's the first thing. The skill of a turn. What's the proper way to swim in and out of a wall, right? I see a lot of kids swimming in circles all day long because all they're doing is racking up volume. So their turns are dreadful. So spending time on high level skill work, everybody can do that, right? And I think that's where coaching needs to, up its game, saying, hey, stop writing these workouts where we're putting just volumes of work on just to get volume in. Why don't you up your game and say, I'm going to be a better technical swimmer? So we could start there and then we can add speed. Once we get the technique down, then we can add some speed to that. And I'm not saying, a 13-year-old needs to be going fast every single practice. That's not what I'm saying, but we hardly ever go fast in practice. So I'm saying we need to start to sprinkle speed work in. It could be, 3 times a week. If they're getting 6 workouts in, 3 of those workouts should be focused on speed, right? And the other 3 could be working on technical aerobic swimming. Sure, that's fine. But we're now in a situation where there should be combination of it. And look, the other thing that needs to be infiltrated here into our workouts is the element of fun. We've taken the element of fun out and we're just being so caught up in the volume of work that they need to do. My kids just aren't having fun with it anymore. So like we need to instill competitiveness back into training. We need to instill some fast swimming that they actually enjoy, they want to come back to. The kids, the goal of my team, when I coached at the highest level, the goal of my team was to walk off the pool deck with a smile on their face so that they want to come back the next day. If they're walking off the pool deck every day and they're upset, why would you expect them to come back? They don't want to come back if they're upset every day or if they're not happy. So I'm not talking about making a kid happy. I'm talking about the enjoyment of swimming and competitiveness and growing and learning. There should be an environment where they thrive. And that's the environment that you want to come back to every day.
Tap in onto that. We're referring to environment, and we spoke about it a little bit earlier, and obviously wanting to be in an environment that is positive and that is fun and enjoyable, that you continuously want to come back. A part of that is also instilling a culture within your team, and that can also draw into your coaching philosophies and the way in which you view the sport itself, and also how you want to specify your training sessions. In your journey, you've worked with and coached athletes from various countries, including both the USA and your native Australia. How does this international exposure contribute to the holistic understanding of the sport, and what can we learn from different swimming cultures and approaches?
I think that I did learn the work efficacy in Australia, like the idea of hard work is something that is ingrained in our country. And I also learned that, going to America, I learned the belief in competitiveness. America is a very competitive society, and what they do here in America is they uplift you, So if you get to this level above somebody, what they say is, I want to be where they are, and they want you to pull them up to where you are. And sometimes in Australia, they want to pull you down. It's almost like a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, where they say, oh, he's too big, he's got too big, so we want to pull him back down to our level. So there's this hard work mentality, which is a beautiful aspect of Australia. There's a very competitive, kind of uplifting feeling in America, and the combination of the two for me is nice. And now I travel all over the world, and I see, the way different countries, different cultures think. I was in South Africa with you, and I got to spend time with the native South Africans and the way that you guys think. And, it's slightly different again. And so it's all good. I think ultimately what any athlete wants, any young athlete, is they want the environment to be a place where they can grow and learn and thrive and enjoy. That's ultimately what everybody wants. So I think if we can constantly be thinking about every single practice that we write about, how can this athlete learn? How can they grow? How can they enjoy this? How can they be competitive? How can they work hard? If we're fulfilling that environment every single practice, and we're answering those questions, I think we're on the right track,
It kind of flips the perspective, as you said, in trying to, I don't want to say that it's an old school mindset, but the way in which you're approaching the coaching side of trying to uplift and develop athletes. It's also then looking more into developing individuals and then trying to turn that into maximizing their potential, so that, as you mentioned, the sessions are the most beneficial that they can be, day in and day out. To look into, as I mentioned at the start of this interview, there are many notable achievements that you have acquired within your swimming tenure, and specifically if looking into your coaching role at Auburn University, being an NCAA Coach of the Year, and you've guided swimmers to numerous titles and honors, and also to Olympic golds and world records. Is there a coaching accomplishment or moment that maybe even it falls outside of swimming that holds a special place in your heart, that contributes to your current mindset, culture, and philosophy and approach to how you coach today?
It's an interesting question. I think everything that I've done along the way has had an ultimate influence on me. I've been very lucky along the way to be coached by some of the greatest coaches on earth. I had in Australia, I had Brian Sutton, who was an incredible coach. I think he was the one that actually invented the terms top end speed, front end speed, back end speed. He's the first person in swimming to ever use those terms. So he was my coach in Australia. Then I had David Marsh, a Hall of Fame coach in America. I came back to Australia, had Ian Pope, who was one of the greatest coaches in Australia's history. And then I went back to America and started coaching under the likes of Richard Quick before he passed away. And Richard is regarded as one of the greatest coaches that ever lived, So I've been very lucky to be influenced and surrounded. Now, in saying that, I sought out those situations. I put myself in those situations as well. I gave myself opportunities. I didn't pass up on those. So when I saw, a chance to go and be either coached by them or influenced by them, I took those chances, So I think that's where it comes into, don't get stuck and be satisfied in something that is unfulfilling. If you want to be challenged, put yourself in challenging places. And that's what I've always done in my life. So I would highly recommend that people seek out challenge. Don't run from it. Enjoy at times being uncomfortable. Like I've learned to enjoy being uncomfortable. The last 6 months, I've gone out on my own. I started my own website, bretthawke.com. I put all my time and energy into that. And it was really uncomfortable in the beginning to back myself and go out alone and do my own thing. And now I'm thriving, and I'm connecting with so many people now. But I think that's just the thing is like, don't be afraid to put yourself in uncomfortable positions regularly and continue to challenge yourself. I wake up every day and I say, how can I get better today? Number one. And then I have a checklist of 20 things that I want to do each day. And I try and get through as many of those as I can. And then I say, okay, I got through 15. I'm going to take these 5 and I'm going to add them to tomorrow, and I try and get through as many things as I can the next day. And if I don't accomplish everything that day, I look back and I say, well, what did I do? Okay, great. I did these things. Tomorrow I'll be even better. I'll get this done. And so I'm always looking to challenge myself and better myself, but I don't get hung up on the things that I don't accomplish that day. I just say, okay, tomorrow's another day. We'll attack it the next day,
Would you say, and maybe this is an athlete mindset, that as you mentioned, it's important to try and place yourself into environments that are uncommon. It's important to try and challenge yourself, as that's when you truly get to learn who you are and you can push yourself to develop your skills. But in saying that, it's important to be consistent in placing yourself into these uncommon environments. And it's sometimes within human nature, it's common for us to become complacent, because at times it may be easy to, like, I don't know if I want to, or it's not for me, or I'm worried or I'm fearful of what the result might be. And in those times, would you agree or perhaps have a different perspective on that? You need to be consistent or have consistency above complacency in trying to mitigate or to try and push yourself into situations that will optimize your development.
Yeah. And I guess if you relate it this way too, like, Cam McAvoy is in a situation where he's primarily training on his own. So there's a level of comfort in that, right? And he's got a program, he's got people around him, so he's comfortable. So I'm not saying that comfort isn't a good thing, but what he's doing that's making that environment uncomfortable is he's testing himself every day, and he's saying, okay, here's where you are today. And he gets the results of those things, and then he comes back and he says, okay, I want to be better than Cam was yesterday. So he's always comparing himself and saying, I got to get better against myself. So, even though he's in this really comfortable environment where everything is set up for him and he's got everything he needs, he's then placing himself in uncomfortable positions during that comfortable environment, saying, I've got to get better because here's what I was yesterday. And I want, so he's always looking at his end goal, whatever that might be. And I think he's looking beyond what is humanly possible right now. And that's kind of where I've always looked. I've always said, okay, where are we going to be 10 years from now? Why not think about 10 years from now? Why think just next year or the year after? I look at world records sometimes and I say, hey, where are they going to be 10, 20 years from now? And I try and put myself in that position. And then you're like really uncomfortable. Then you're like, oh, wow, now I've got to be better than I ever thought I could be. And that's when you start to challenge yourself on a whole different level. And I think that's what Cam's doing, which is something that I've always done in myself too.
The way I perceive it to be is, at times you need to be comfortable within your own bubble, but in saying that, through introspecting as Cam does, you don't want to overanalyze it, but you want to analyze yourself in your day-to-day and how you can be better, so that tomorrow you'll be better than what you were yesterday. And that today you're one step closer to being better than what you were.
Yeah, and he's using data for that. He's collecting a lot of data, which is holding him accountable, which is good. It's not just like, oh, I want to be better than this. It's like, no, this is the time, and this is how you've got to, get that point to get better at it. So like he's really holding himself accountable through data.
If we were to do a little bit of personal introspection, Simon Sinek talks about finding our why as a driving force behind what we do. Can you perhaps share with us the personal why that motivates you in your journey, whether it's in coaching, podcasting, or your involvement within the world of swimming? What fuels your passion and dedication to the sport and your role within it?
I don't know. Ultimately, deep down, I think there is something inside me that always wanted to be better than what I was, and challenge myself out of being complacent with just being an average person, right? and there's nothing against the average person. I like people that wake up and go to their job every day and come home and have a family, and they do that 20, 30, 40 years and they stay in the same position. I've just never been that person. I've always wanted to take on the world. I've always wanted more. I've always wanted to try and have some sort of influence too on the world, which I am right now, and I feel like I've always wanted to do it in a positive way, but I'm affecting change within swimming. And like, those are the things that challenge me. I don't want to just be an average person. And I don't know where that stems from, honestly. Like I know that I came from a very good family, but it was challenging at times. My brother went to prison at the age of 18 and I was 20. So I was 2 years older than him. He went to prison at 18, and then a couple of months later, I made the Australian team for the first time. So my parents had two sons. One of them was in prison, and one of them was representing the country. And so, my brother put some of his gifts and talents into negativity, and I always tried to put mine into positivity. And we're just two different people in that sense, and we had two different paths. And so I think we both had the same intentions. My brother was really good at being bad, and I was really good at being good, so it was just like we put our energies in different places, and we did really well out of it, so it's kind of silly to think that, but that's where it is sometimes. I think that we all have a choice to where we put our energies and how the world affects us. And I've always wanted to just grind and be the best I could possibly be and try and affect as many people as I could,
It's admirable to be able to day to day to look at yourself and be able to reflect and go, I want to be able to optimize myself and to be able to, extend my reach and try and uplift others and help develop those that are around me. And through enriching your environment, so those that are around you, it can help you and be fulfilling to yourself. And I always think of it in the analogy of, they often talk about a glass being half full or half empty.
Yeah.
And through self-development and self-enrichment, if you're able to maximize your potential through filling your cup to the point of overfilling your cup, then hopefully it will extend in full cups that are around you. It's a group effect, so to speak.
I will add this though. I'll add this caveat. Sometimes I've struggled with trying to understand other people, and give them the grace to say that not everybody thinks like I do. Like I wake up and I say, how can I maximize my potential? And sometimes I get really frustrated with swimmers or coaches where I feel like they're not thinking like that. So I've had trouble in the past where I've kind of, rubbed up against people, and I've kind of clashed a little bit, with my athletes or with coaches to say like, why aren't you maximizing this? Why aren't you pushing harder? Why don't you see what I see? And sometimes you get these talented kids come through and they just don't want it like you want it, and that in the past that's bothered me, and I've had to kind of reconcile that sometimes and understand that and sometimes let it go, but I'll tell you, early on in my coaching career, I really had a problem with it. When I saw someone with extreme talent not maximizing it, I would get really frustrated, really angry at times, and it would bother me. So I wouldn't say that I've always been a pleasure to be around. I've been one of these people who has pushed other people to try and get the best out of them too. And sometimes that has worked, sometimes it hasn't. So I think I've learned over time maybe not to push as hard sometimes,
And it kind of goes back to what you were speaking about earlier. It's for some, it's finding comfort in the uncomfortable. It's about being willing to go into those dark places to try and unlock that potential. And
well, the word willing is an important word there, willing. And sometimes I've been more willing than other people have, and that can be, confrontational. People would say, "Oh, Brett's confrontational." Well, yeah, at times I have been confrontational because I'm trying to push you into something that I see in you, and you're not willing, But yeah, that could be a challenge for young coaches sometimes when they want it so much that the athletes don't want it as much as you do,
I think that's definitely something that you see, and I think it's with any athlete. It's that raw emotion, And it's reflected, as you said, in coaching. It's that there's a drive and you want to push, and sometimes that emotion overflows, and it's it can sometimes just blurt out, so to speak. In closing, I would love to ask if there's any advice that you could perhaps share, with young and aspiring athletes or coaches, sports enthusiasts who are looking to make their mark in the world of sports.
Listen, I try and tell athletes this all the time, young athletes. We all develop at different levels, different stages of our life, right? Like when I was a young athlete, I wasn't as physically strong as I am today, with the people around me, So when I was 12, 13, I had kids my age who were growing faster than me, were bigger than me, stronger than me, had come to understand their athletic gifts earlier than me. So, we all develop at different stages. I think one of the things that I've had to come to terms with is be comfortable in your own skin, be comfortable with who you are, what you've been given. Come to terms with those things. You're not going to be the tallest person. You're not going to be the shortest. You're not going to be the strongest. You're not going to be the weakest. It's just like we're all different in different areas. We have strengths and weaknesses. And what I've come to identify is like, I do have strengths and I have to work on my weaknesses. That's okay. But my weaknesses don't define me. My inabilities don't define me. It's more of what my abilities, my willingness, my drive. Those are the things that define me more. But I think, again, like what I'm saying here is, I encourage people to be comfortable in your own skin. Stop comparing yourself to everybody else, and just say, how can I get the best out of what I've got? When I came to terms with that, I became a much happier person, a much stronger person, because I was then able to say, no, this is me. That's them. I'm not them. This is me. And this is what I've got. And this is what I can do. And this is how I can get better. So when I start to focus on all those things and be happy in my own skin and be okay with the person that I was looking at in the mirror, and have confidence in that person, man, that changes everything. So yeah, learn to like the person that's looking at you in the mirror. And I think you'll go a long way.
Definitely a takeaway point there is through it's focusing on your mental well-being and your mental health, and being able to be happy with who you are as an individual. And as we were speaking about earlier, it's that day-to-day self-reflection, that day-to-day introspection, being able to find comfort in, who is Michael Bromfield?
Yep.
What do I stand for? And what are my strengths and values? And same for you, who is Brett Hawke? And where can I try and, day to day have a successful and impactful, everlasting meaning around those who we engage with? And, taking it back all the way to the start of the episode, looking at how the environment plays an important role, looking at your immediate circle, your family and your friends, and they play an integral role in how you can develop as an individual, and finding also that bit of self-comfort, and also assisting in your trajectory for success. But other than that, thank you, Brett, for coming on to Ballers Brew. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on and being able to pick into your wide variety of insightful knowledge and getting to understand a little bit better of your story and how the swimming world may pan out in the years to come, and how the sprint revolution is continuously evolving. Other than that, my name is Michael Bromfield, and for those that are still listening, I truly appreciate your time, and I can promise that there are many more episodes to come. That is it. This is Ballers Brew signing out.